Malcolm Carter was a 16-year-old boy who loved airplanes more than anything else in the world. He didn't just like them, he knew everything about them. While other kids played video games or watched TV, Malcolm would sit by his window watching planes fly in the sky. He could name any plane just by hearing its engine and even draw pictures of cockpits from memory. His room was like a tiny airplane museum. There were toy planes on his shelves, posters of famous pilots on his walls, and maps with colorful pins showing the paths of different flights. Everyone who saw his room could tell that Malcolm was born to fly. But not everyone believed in his dream. Some kids at school laughed at him. A black pilot? Good luck with that, they would say. Even adults would tell him, maybe you should be a mechanic instead. They didn't think he could ever be a real pilot. But Malcolm didn't let their words bring him down because his father, James Carter, always told him something important. You belong in the sky. The only thing between you and the clouds is courage. James Carter worked for the Federal Aviation Administration, the people in charge of airplanes and airports. He knew how the industry worked, and he knew his son had what it took to become a great pilot. One day something amazing happened. Malcolm received a letter in the mail. His hands shook as he held it, too nervous to open it. His father opened it for him and read the words out loud. Congratulations, Malcolm. You have been chosen for the Horizon Airlines Career Exploration Program. Malcolm's eyes filled with happy tears. Out of hundreds of students, he had been picked. This program would let him learn from real pilots, visit airline operations, and see the inside world of flying. This was his first big step toward his dream. The night before his first day, Malcolm couldn't sleep. He lay in bed, listening to the distant sound of planes flying overhead. Tomorrow he will walk into an airport, not as a visitor but as a future pilot. But he had no idea that his dream would soon be tested in a way he never expected. The next morning, the air was cool and the airport was busy. Planes took off and landed, and people in uniforms hurried around with suitcases. Malcolm stood outside the Horizon Airlines headquarters, feeling his heart beat fast with excitement. He was wearing a nice buttoned-up shirt, his backpack on his shoulders. Around his neck hung a special badge that read, Career Exploration Program, Authorized Guest. This badge showed that he had permission to be there. Malcolm Carter. A kind voice called out. Malcolm turned and saw a friendly-looking woman in business clothes walking toward him. She smiled warmly. Hello, I'm Jessica Moore. I work in human resources for Horizon Airlines. We're so excited to have you here. You were one of the top applicants for this program. Malcolm shook her hand, trying to hide his nerves. Thank you. I'm really happy to be here. Well, the rest of your group will arrive in about 20 minutes, she said. But for now, let me take you to the pilot's lounge. You can wait there comfortably. Malcolm followed her inside. The hallways were filled with big pictures of pilots, famous flights, and airline history. He stopped for a moment to look at a picture of a black pilot surrounded by children. His heart swelled with pride. Soon they reached a door with a sign that said, Pilot's Lounge, authorized personnel only. Malcolm hesitated. Was he really allowed in here? Jessica noticed and smiled. Don't worry. You're on the list. Just relax here and I'll come back for you soon. She scanned her card and the door unlocked with a click. Malcolm stepped inside and gasped. The lounge was amazing. There were soft leather chairs, warm lights, and a big screen showing a documentary about airplanes. The air smelled like fresh coffee. He took his seat, feeling like he was in a dream. For a moment he forgot about everything. No one was doubting him. No one was telling him he couldn't be a pilot. He was just a boy who loved flying, sitting in a place where pilots belonged. But his moment of peace was about to be interrupted. Malcolm was completely lost in watching the screen. The documentary was explaining how jet engines changed the history of flight. His favorite part. He leaned forward, fascinated. Then the door to the lounge swung open. Malcolm didn't look up. He didn't hear the footsteps coming toward him. But the woman who entered wasn't here to learn about aviation history. Her name was Captain Sarah Whitman. She had been flying planes for 20 years. Her uniform was perfect, her short blonde hair neatly tucked under her pilot's hat, and she had 4 golden stripes on her shoulders, showing her high rank. As she walked in, her eyes landed on Malcolm. She frowned. He looked too young. He was black. And he was sitting there too comfortably, as if he belonged. That didn't sit right with her. She walked toward him slowly, her heels clicking against the floor. Malcolm noticed her from the corner of his eye and quickly stood up. He smiled politely, just like his father had taught him. Good morning, ma'am, he said kindly. I'm Malcolm Carter. I'm part of the Horizon Airlines Career Exploration Program. Miss Moore from HR told me I could wait here. Captain Whitman didn't smile back. She stared at his badge. Then she looked back at his face. "This is the pilot's lounge," she said in a cold voice. "It's not open to visitors." Malcolm's heart started to pound. He held up his badge to show her. "Yes, ma'am," he said, trying to stay calm. "I was brought here by Miss Jessica Moore. She gave me this badge and told me I could wait here." Her eyes narrowed. "Don't lie to me." Her voice was sharp like ice. Malcolm froze. What? He wasn't lying. Before he could say another word, Captain Whitman reached out and snatched the badge from his chest. Malcolm's stomach dropped. "What are you doing?" he asked, his voice shaking. She didn't answer. She just stared at the badge in her hands, her lips pressed tightly together. Then the worst thing happened. She turned to the security guard standing outside the door. "We have a trespasser," she said loudly. "Remove him." Malcolm's breath caught in his throat. The guard stepped into the room, their eyes hard with suspicion. A few other pilots and crew members in the lounge turned to watch. None of them spoke up for him. None of them asked if this was a mistake. Malcolm felt the weight of their stares. His face burned with embarrassment. His heart pounded. He had done nothing wrong. He belonged here. But no one believed him. Then, just as the security guards moved closer, the glass doors swung open again. And in walked someone no one expected. It was Keanu Reeves. But he wasn't here as a celebrity. He was here as the co-owner of the airline. And he had seen everything. What happened next would change everything. Malcolm blinked, feeling confused. I'm not lying," he said. Captain Lancaster stepped closer. She reached out fast and grabbed the badge on his chest. With a sharp pull, the lanyard broke and the ID card dangled in her fingers. She flipped it over, looked at it, then scoffed. "This is fake," she said. Malcolm's heart started beating faster. "A kid sneaking into a restricted area with a fake badge," Lancaster said, shaking her head. "This is exactly what we trained to stop." She reached for her radio. "Security, this is Captain Lancaster. I need help right now in the pilot's lounge. We have an intruder." Malcolm's chest tightened. He felt panic rising inside him. "Wait, please," he said quickly. "This is real. Miss Moore can tell you. She just stepped out. I didn't sneak in. I didn't do anything wrong." But Lancaster didn't even look at him. She was staring at the door, waiting for security to come. "You broke the rules," she said. "This is a serious offense. I don't care what story you're trying to tell." Malcolm stood still, his hands shaking. The room, which had felt warm and exciting just a minute ago, now felt cold and scary. The air pressed down on him like heavy metal. All he had done was sit and dream about flying, and now that dream felt like it was being taken away. The pilot's lounge, which had been quiet and peaceful, now felt like a courtroom. And Malcolm was the one on trial. Captain Sarah Lancaster still held his ID badge. Her shoulders were stiff and her eyes were sharp. She spoke again, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Young man," she said, her voice full of anger, "this is not a school field trip. This is a secure area for real pilots. You can't just walk in here." "I didn't," Malcolm whispered. His voice was small now. "Miss Moore brought me here. She told me to wait while she talked to someone. She gave me this badge." Lancaster's mouth twisted. "If you were really part of our program, you'd be in uniform. You'd be with a supervisor. But instead, you're here alone, acting like this is your personal lounge." Her voice grew colder. "Tell me, were you looking around for something to steal? Or did you think this was funny?" "I was just watching the documentary," Malcolm said, his voice shaking. "That's all." He looked at the television. It was still playing quietly in the background. On the screen, big airplanes flew high into the sky. Just minutes ago, Malcolm had felt like he was one step closer to his dream of becoming a pilot. Now that dream was crumbling. Lancaster held up his badge like it was proof of a crime. "This looks like something printed from a school computer," she said. "We take safety very seriously. This is a federal building. Do you know how much trouble you're in?" That word, trouble, made Malcolm's stomach drop. He heard footsteps. The sound was getting closer. 2 security guards entered the room. They were dressed in dark uniforms. Their faces were serious. Lancaster pointed straight at Malcolm. "That's him," she said. "Unauthorized access. Possible fake ID. Search for him. Find out who he is. And get him out of here." One of the guards was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He looked at Malcolm for a long moment before turning to Lancaster. "Do we have any record of him being part of the program?" he asked. "I highly doubt it," Lancaster said sharply. "Check his name." Malcolm's hands started shaking even more. I am part of the program," he said. Miss Jessica Moore from HR gave me the badge this morning. I haven't done anything wrong. The tall guard sighed. He stepped closer. Sir, please stay calm, he said. We just need to check. Can we see another form of ID? The other guard asked. I only have my student card, Malcolm mumbled. He fumbled with his wallet, his fingers shaking. Outside the lounge, people had started to gather. Some were pilots, some were airport staff. They whispered to each other. Their eyes darted toward Malcolm. He could feel their stares. One person shook his head. Another point. Someone pulled out a phone and started recording. Malcolm's stomach twisted. They're watching me like I don't belong. Like I'm dangerous. He swallowed hard and tried again. Please just call Miss Moore, he said. She knows this is a mistake. But Lancaster wasn't listening. She turned to the crowd instead. She held up the badge. This, she said loudly, is exactly why we have security rules. We can't afford to make mistakes. One wrong decision, one person in the wrong place, and lives could be at risk. Malcolm's mouth fell open. She's not just saying I broke a rule. She's acting like I'm a danger. Like I could hurt someone. Tears burned in his eyes, but he refused to let them fall. Not in front of Lancaster. Not in front of the cameras. His hands clenched into fists at his sides. He thought about the letter he had gotten from Horizon Airlines. He remembered how his dad had opened it, how they had cheered together. They had celebrated like it was the first step toward his future. He had worked hard. He had done everything right. And now people were looking at him like he was a criminal. Like he didn't belong. Like he had no right to be here at all. The taller security officer spoke into his radio. Dispatch, we need verification on a visitor ID. Name, Malcolm Carter. Age, 16. Says he's with the career program. Malcolm's heart pounded. Each word made him feel smaller. Intruder. Possible threat. He wanted to scream. This was supposed to be his big day. His first real step toward becoming a pilot. But now he was being treated like a danger. The whispers outside grew louder. More people had gathered. They peered through the glass windows. Some looked confused. Others looked suspicious. One person pointed at Malcolm and shook his head. Another raised a phone and started recording. Malcolm felt like he was shrinking. Why won't anyone speak up? Why won't anyone help me? He tried again, his voice barely above a whisper. Please, he begged. Just call Miss Moore. He could barely breathe. But Lancaster didn't care. She lifted the badge higher for everyone to see. This, she said, is why we can't let our guard down. One mistake, one person where they shouldn't be, and people could die. Malcolm stared at her in shock. She wasn't just saying he broke a rule anymore. She was saying he was dangerous. That he could hurt people. Just because he had been sitting quietly watching TV in the wrong room. His hands shook. His stomach felt sick. Tears burned behind his eyes, but he forced them down. Not in front of Lancaster. Not in front of everyone staring at him. He thought about all the hours he had spent dreaming of the sky. He thought about the planes on the TV flying high and free. He had believed he was on his way. He had believed he was taking his first step toward becoming a pilot. But now it felt like someone had stolen his dream, right in front of his eyes. And no one, not one person, was stepping in to stop it. The officer's radio made a crackling sound, but no one answered. No one said, Jessica Moore. No one said, yes, everything is okay. Malcolm felt his throat get tight. His face felt hot. He could feel the eyes of everyone in the room watching him, judging him. They didn't see him as a student anymore. They saw him as a problem. In the corner of the room, the TV played an old black and white movie. On the screen, a pilot walked across the runway, standing tall. He saluted, then climbed into his plane, ready to fly. Malcolm turned his head slightly, watching the screen. That's where I belong, he thought. Up there, flying in the sky. Not here. Not like this. But right now, all he could do was stand still. The room felt thick, heavy, like he couldn't breathe properly. The pilots, security guards, and other staff weren't looking at him like a kid who loved planes. They were looking at him like he was a danger. Captain Lancaster, the woman in charge, walked back and forth, her arms crossed. She enjoyed being the center of attention. She spoke loudly as if she were performing for an audience. Not all threats wear masks, she said. Sometimes they look just like this. Young, polite, full of stories. Malcolm swallowed hard. They don't see me anymore, he thought. They only see the story she's making up about me. The radio on the security officer's shoulder crackled again. Still, no one could find Jessica Moore. No one to tell them the truth. Then footsteps. Not loud, not rushing. Not panicking. Steady. Come. The glass doors swung open. Everyone turned to look. A man walked into the room. He wore a brown hoodie and dark jeans. His face was calm, serious, but kind. Malcolm blinked. It was Keanu Reeves. Yes, Keanu Reeves, the movie star. The man from posters and action films. And he wasn't alone. Behind him, 3 important-looking people from Horizon Airlines walked in. They wore business suits. 2 assistants followed, carrying tablets and clipboards. Everything changed. The whispers stopped. The air felt different. Captain Lancaster, who had looked so sure of herself a moment ago, suddenly seemed unsure. Keanu walked in like he belonged there. Like he was in charge. And well, he was. He stopped right in front of Malcolm. He didn't look past him. He didn't look through him. He looked at him. Malcolm Carter? Keanu asked, his voice gentle. Malcolm nodded. Yes, sir. Keanu turned to the crowd. Then to the security guards. I know what happened here, Keanu said. His voice was soft but strong. This young man is part of an approved program. He was brought here by someone from our HR department. He did nothing wrong. Pause. You can all put your hands down. Step back. Captain Lancaster opened her mouth to argue, but Keanu raised a finger. Not angry. Just calm. Captain Lancaster, he said, turning to her. Before you say anything, I suggest you watch the security footage. The video has just been pulled from the cameras in this hallway. I think you'll find it interesting. Captain Lancaster's face went pale. She said nothing. Keanu continued. Malcolm is not a threat. He is not an intruder. He is a student. He belongs here. More than anyone else who would judge him just for being in this room. Then Keanu looked at Malcolm again. His voice softened. You did the right thing by standing your ground. Malcolm's breath caught in his throat. For the first time in hours, someone saw him. Really saw him. And just like that, the balance of power shifted. The people who had been whispering doubts now fell silent. Some stared at the floor. Others glanced at each other, uncomfortable. A security guard cleared his throat and took a small step back, like he wanted to disappear. One of the important business people stepped forward. He held up a tablet and connected it to the big screen on the wall. The black screen flickered. Then the video played. The security footage showed the hallway outside the pilot's lounge. First, Jessica Moore appeared on screen. She smiled as she walked beside Malcolm. She stopped in front of the lounge door and scanned her key card. Then she placed a lanyard around Malcolm's neck. She pointed to a seat inside. She waved at him like she was telling him it was okay to go in. There was no sneaking, no lying, no tricks. Malcolm had come in with permission. He had followed the rules. The video kept playing. Malcolm sat inside the room, hands folded, watching TV. He didn't move around. He didn't touch anything. He didn't even take out his phone. He just sat quietly. Then Captain Lancaster entered. The camera captured everything, how she froze when she saw Malcolm, how she walked toward him, how she pulled off his badge without checking it. The video stopped. Silence. The energy in the room changed again. The people who had doubted Malcolm now looked embarrassed. The security officers shifted uncomfortably. Captain Lancaster stood still. Her arms were crossed, but her shoulders had dropped. Her face had tightened, like she was trying to think of an excuse. But there was no excuse. Keanu didn't look away. He looked right at her. You saw a boy sitting where you didn't expect him, Keanu said. His voice was calm, but his words were strong. And instead of asking questions, you imagined a problem that wasn't there. Then you made the whole room believe it. Captain Lancaster opened her mouth again, but Keanu raised a hand. Not yet, he said. Let me finish. His voice was never loud, but it felt powerful. You didn't question him because he broke the rules, Keanu said. You questioned him because he didn't look the way you expected. The room was so quiet it almost hurt. One of the Horizon Airlines executives stepped forward. He cleared his throat. Keanu continued. You felt uncomfortable. And instead of thinking about that feeling, you reacted. You called security. You made a scene. You humiliated him. More silence. Malcolm stood in the same spot. His hands were still shaking. But something inside him had changed. The fear was still there. But now there was something else too. Something stronger. Validation. He hadn't imagined what happened. He hadn't overreacted. And most importantly, he hadn't been wrong. Captain Sarah Lancaster had always been known as a strong leader, a respected pilot, a confident woman. But now at this moment she stood alone. The video showed the truth. And no excuse could erase what everyone had seen with their own eyes. Keanu Reeves stepped forward again. Not with anger. Not with yelling. just with truth. "Captain Lancaster," he said, "your job is not just to fly planes. You represent this airline, its values, its integrity." Lancaster's lips pressed together. Keanu didn't stop. "Today you didn't use your authority to protect anyone," he said. "You used it to embarrass a young man who did nothing wrong." More silence. Keanu's voice stayed calm, but his words felt heavy. "You didn't stop Malcolm because of what he did," he said. "You stopped him because of what you assumed." Lancaster swallowed. Malcolm took a deep breath. And for the first time in that room, he didn't feel small. He felt seen. A woman with silver hair and sharp eyes stepped beside Keanu. She spoke for the first time, her voice serious. "Because of what just happened, and because there have been problems before, you are not allowed to fly anymore until we figure this out." The room was silent. The pilot, Captain Whitman, looked shocked. For a moment, she didn't seem so confident anymore. Then her face changed. "I didn't know who he was," she said in a quiet voice. But everyone could hear her. Keanu looked at her, his face showing not anger but surprise. "That's the problem," he said. Whitman thought she was explaining herself, but instead she was proving something bigger. It wasn't just about breaking a rule, it was about how people see each other, how some are treated with respect without question, and how others have to fight for it. Security officers came to take her away. They didn't grab her, but they didn't give her a choice either. She had to leave. She walked slowly, her shoulders no longer proud. No one stood up for her. No one said, "Wait, she didn't mean it." No one defended her at all. Malcolm stood still, watching everything. His hands were shaking, but his head was held high. He hadn't yelled. He hadn't begged. And still, without raising his voice, he stood strong. The room felt different now. It was like everyone had just learned a big lesson about power, about what happens when people are held responsible for their actions, and about what justice really looks like. The heavy feeling in the air slowly faded. The silence was still there, but it was different now. It wasn't the kind of silence that makes you feel alone. It was the kind of silence that happens when something true and important has just been said. Malcolm was still in the same place, but everything felt different. The embarrassment, the pain of being accused, it was still there, but it didn't feel as strong anymore. It was like a heavy weight had been lifted, even if just a little. Across the room, the sound of footsteps echoed. But these weren't sharp, angry footsteps like Captain Whitman's. They were steady, calm, strong. Malcolm turned and saw a tall black woman in a pilot's uniform walking toward him. She looked powerful, kind, and full of confidence. Her name tag said Captain Naomi Bennett. She smiled at him and held out her hand. "Malcolm Carter," she said warmly, "I've heard about you. And I have to say, today you showed more strength than even some of the most experienced pilots I know." Malcolm shook her hand. He was surprised by her kindness. He wasn't sure what to say. "Thank you, ma'am," he finally managed to whisper. Captain Bennett leaned in a little, lowering her voice so only he could hear. "I know what it feels like to walk into a room where people don't think you belong," she said. "Especially in this job. But listen to me, you do belong. And more than that, you are needed." Her words touched something deep inside Malcolm. Something that had been hurt but not broken. She motioned toward the hallway. "Come with me," she said. "I want to show you something." Malcolm followed her through the airport. They walked past the same people who, just minutes ago, had looked at him with doubt and suspicion. Now their looks were different. Some of them looked sorry. Some even nodded at him. No one stopped him. No one asked where he was going. They reached a gate where a plane was waiting. It was huge, its silver body shining in the afternoon sun. Captain Bennett led him up the bridge, through the cabin, and all the way to a locked door. The cockpit. She gave a small nod to the crew, then opened the door. Malcolm stepped inside. The room was filled with buttons, lights, and glowing screens. It looked just like the pictures he had seen in books, but better. His breath caught in his throat. "This," Captain Bennett said, putting a gentle hand on his shoulder, "is where you belong." Malcolm stared at the cockpit, his eyes wide. He had dreamed of this moment for so long. But now it wasn't just a dream. It was real. Captain Bennett watched him with a quiet smile. She knew this was a moment he would never forget. She picked up a headset and placed it in his hands. She didn't say, "You might belong here one day." She didn't say, "Keep working hard and maybe someday." She gave it to him now, as if passing down something important, something earned. Malcolm held the headset carefully like it was something precious. He wasn't just being told he could be a pilot, he was being shown. When they walked back into the airport, everything felt different. People moved aside to let him pass. Some nodded. Others looked at the ground, maybe too embarrassed to meet his eyes. But Malcolm didn't need their apologies. He didn't need them to say, "I'm sorry." What he needed was space. Space to exist, to dream, to chase his future without always having to prove he belonged. In the days that followed, what had happened in the pilot's lounge spread. First, people at the airport talked about it. Then it was on the news. Then it was everywhere. Aviation websites, TV channels, social media, everyone was talking about it. Horizon Airlines made a statement. They said they did not allow discrimination, treating people unfairly because of who they are. They promised to make changes. But the biggest surprise? Keanu Reeves himself helped start a new program. It was a program to help kids. Kids like Malcolm, kids who dreamed of flying but were told no just because of who they were. And guess who became the face of the program? Malcolm Carter. Not because he wanted to be famous. Not because he asked for attention. But because the truth needed to be told. He had lived it. And now he could help others. Malcolm traveled to schools, youth centers, and aviation programs. He told kids about his dream. About what had happened to him. And about how he had kept going even when the world told him to stop. Every time he spoke, he felt the pain of that day get a little smaller. Not because he forgot, but because he had turned it into something bigger. Even with all the attention, Malcolm never changed. On weekends, he still sat by his bedroom window watching the planes fly by. But now when he looked at them, it wasn't wishing. It was with knowing. One evening, his father stood beside him. He placed a strong hand on Malcolm's shoulder, looking at him with pride. "You didn't just survive that day," his father said. "You rose above it." Malcolm looked up at the sky. A plane soared through the clouds, leaving a trail behind it. For so long, the sky had felt far away, like something just out of reach. But not anymore. Now he knew the truth. The sky wasn't just a dream. It was a promise. And finally, after all this time, it had answered back. Malcolm's story is a reminder. A reminder that dreams are not decided by how others see us. They are decided by how strongly we hold on to them. Even when the world tells us, "You don't belong." Even when people doubt us. Even when it feels like we're standing alone. Because sometimes all it takes is one voice, one act of kindness, one moment of courage to open the sky. If you like this story, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below and let me know what you think. And don't forget to subscribe for more thrilling adventures, mysteries, and unforgettable moments. Your support keeps these stories alive and the creativity flowing. Thanks for watching. I can't wait to see you in the next video.